It somehow got even better for the Minnesota Wild as they dominate a 7-game road trip going 5-1-1 in large part due to Kirill Kaprizov having MVP type numbers, now tied for the league lead in scoring on a 6-game point streak. But it's not just him. Depth scoring has been there for Minnesota too, including fan favorite Jakub Lauko being insane and even Brock Faber getting in on the action. There's a lot to break down on what's been going on for the Minnesota Wild and how they have been so much better than I think people anticipated this season coming up in this episode of Hat Trick HQ. But before we get into that, guys, gotta remind you that a huge portion of you watching, 89% of you, are not subscribed. We cover every NHL team, not just the Wild. We'll be covering the Wild, but everyone else. So if you want your home for daily NHL news, all teams, all things going on, this is the spot to be. Hit the button down below. It's completely free. Mark, we got to talk about the Minnesota Wild right now, and we got to start with our boy Kirill Kaprizov, now at 18 points on the season in just 9 games. 2 points per game. He's on a 6-game point streak, and within this 6-game point streak, every single game has been a multi-point game. I don't know, I know a lot of Wild fans are saying we got to show to him that this team is worth sticking around for. I know Minnesota can offer the most money. They got to offer him a big contract soon, but right now, this team has been incredibly fun to watch, and it looks like Kirill himself, even though his goal scoring hasn't even been at the level we expect necessarily, it has been insane. So much fun to watch him, and he seems to be having a ton of fun out there as well.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is if you're looking at this the standpoint of the team trying to show Kirill to stay, look at the standings itself. They've beat some great teams throughout this run. I mean, they've taken some losses against Seattle, Winnipeg, and a game against Philly that should never have happened. But looking at games against the Florida Panthers, the Tampa Bay Lightning, the St. Louis Blues, who's not the best team, but they still have a good team, and finishing off against the Pittsburgh Penguins last night. Josh, do you think just looking at this, they're convincing him enough at this point? Or do you think maybe they're going to have to go into this next stretch of games against Tampa, Toronto, LA, and really dominate to continue to show Kirill that this is his team and they're going to play hard with him there?
Look, I mean, I think that's kind of been the thing since he's got over to Minnesota, right? And he seems to love the place. At this point, I think this whole convincing thing might even be getting blown out of proportion, even though I talk about it a lot as well. But he has just shown that he loves to be here. He loves playing with Matt Zuccarello, who's not getting any younger yet, is still a point per game player right now this season. So I think they've shown him enough. I mean, we'll have to wait and see how the rest of the season goes. But they'll back up the Brinks truck for him. They'll tell him, look, we got a bunch of money to spend in the coming seasons. But honestly, the most impressive thing has been this stretch of games, Mark, where I think you have his last 5 games. Let's take a look at this. I mean, this is just 5 of his 6-game point streak. You can see goal, 1 assist, 2 assists, 2 goals, 1 assist, 2 assists, 1 goal, 2 assists. Every single game he is dominating. He's at the very top of the NHL. I believe he's still number 1 in terms of time on ice per game for forwards. And Mark, the scary thing is here, yes, he's getting some power play points. He has, I think, 6 power play points of his 18 on the season, but there's a lot of players who have a much higher share of their points on the power play. And his goal scoring touch, while still solid, 5 goals in 9 games, when you're watching him, there's a few times you're like, man, he could have easily scored there, right? His goal scoring touch is not quite at that level that maybe we've seen in the past few years. So what's even more scary is that this is probably not even his final form. I don't even know how it could possibly get better, but I think it genuinely can.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at the lines, you said it was Zuccarello. This top line feels like the most, and it probably is statistically the most dominant first line in the NHL. You're looking through the lineup, there's still a lot of players that are performing. I mean, looking at the stats, a guy like Matt Boldy, who's getting second line minutes, is currently second on the team with 11 points. Looking at this list, Josh, is there anyone within this lineup that's really surprised you from where they're playing to what production they are putting up?
Yeah, for sure. And I think the number one guy that jumps out to me right now is Jakub Lauko, or Jakub Lauko, I believe I probably should be saying. On the 4th line there, Lauko has been so good in his limited minutes. I mean, Lauko is a guy who's playing, anywhere between 8 and 12 minutes most games, and to find him there, yeah, he's averaging 10 minutes a game, but he has 3 points in 9 games. He is a -2, whatever. But the thing with him is he scored a goal in this last game, and it was a nice goal all the same. But with Lauko, what you're getting is a guy who changes the momentum of the game. It feels like every time he's on the ice, it's exactly what you want out of a 4th-line player. And honestly, he could easily be on the 3rd line right now. I'm just saying, like, for the future, this guy looks better than we expected. Don't forget, they traded, I think it was Lauko in a 4th to Minnesota for Vinny Lettieri in a 4th to Boston. And Lettieri hasn't played this year. Lauko is a legitimate impact player. You can feel, he's one of those guys, Mark, where when you watch him on the ice, you're like, the team looks almost more inspired. The crowd starts to get into it a bit more. That's what Lauko tends to bring, and for where he's playing in the lineup, it's exactly what you want. But even though he's not setting the world on fire in terms of points or maybe some advanced metrics, he's become a fan favorite for a reason. Wild fans are rallying behind this guy because he gives them energy, he gives the team energy, and honestly, 3 points in 9 games for a fourth line player is really not that bad.
And I mean, looking at some of the bottom six guys, I liked how you talk about fans rallying out behind someone making the team almost play up. I feel like that's the thing with Marcus Foligno too. Having that guy that can lay the bone crushing hit, a guy that can come in,
Oh yeah.
lay the body, and fire up the team is almost underrated a lot in this league. Yes, a lot of fans look and say, awesome, we love seeing a guy light someone up. But imagine this being a friend, this being a teammate, lighting someone up, or even lighting up the scoring sheet with a guy like Lauko going out, scoring that beautiful goal that we seen at the beginning of the video. Having guys like this in the bottom six is huge. Having a guy like Matt Boldy still being young, a guy like Rossi stepping into that top line role, taking it over and just dominating. I mean, looking at the stats, Rossi is fourth on the team with 8 points. This top line is absolutely dominant, and I know you want to get into the defense a bit, so I'll let you take that over completely.
Well, I just want to give a quick shout out on the forwards as well. Shout out Freddie Gaudreau with 2 nice goals. Before we get into Faber, Freddie Gaudreau 2 nice goals against the Pittsburgh Penguins was really awesome. And Joel Eriksson, who continues to be one of the most underrated players in the entire league year after year. He's a 30-goal guy. He's always a Selke finalist. But let's get into that defense. I mean, the guy we got to talk about right now is Brock Faber. I mean, this guy, we knew he was good. 47 points in 82 games last year, and he's actually on about similar pace this year so far with 5 points in 9 games. But it's not just that. He brought the physical edge in the last game. This trade is looking better and better as the days go by, including the fact that Kevin Fiala was not, I think it was not at practice due to missing a team meeting. So there's some stuff going on there in LA right now. I still love Kevin Fiala, is what it is. But Brock Faber has looked so mature. And it's not just on the offensive end. There was a couple of plays, even on the defensive end, where a puck would bounce in front of their goalie, in front of Fleury in that Penguins game, and he'd be the one to swipe it away. He's often has the most active stick on the team on defense. And yeah, they have other guys who are, I suppose, better shutdown type guys like a Jonas Brodin. But what Faber brings dynamically to the game on offense and on defense, he's able to start the rush, he's able to shut down a rush, he's able to be reliable in every single situation, very seldom makes mistakes, but he's also able to be physical. We saw he has 5 penalty minutes this season. He is super disciplined. He doesn't take minor penalties. If he's getting a penalty, you know it's going to be a major. He's a +5 on the year, and he dropped the mitts, and he wasn't even bad. I mean, every day watching Brock Faber is honestly a pleasure, and I don't know. That contract is already starting to look like, I mean, we knew it was going to be good from day one, but to watch him play every single night, this is one of these guys that's going to be a 25-minute a game, #1 defenseman for a decade from now, you know?
And the crazy thing looking at too is Minnesota fans love this guy. I mean, his play shows it enough. Like you said, this is going to be a bona fide #1 defenseman on the Wild when they start making their runs. They're going to build a better team around a guy like Faber and Kaprizov as well. But having him at this age of 22 is incredible, and I feel like it's a guy a lot of hockey fans are falling in love with, especially when the photo came out of him celebrating Kaprizov scoring. That was incredible, and that's when he was a fan watching the games. This guy coming in, I think it was a first round pick and Tim for Fiala. That was an absolute heist coming in. But Josh, looking at this team, looking how dominant they've been with just their overall schedule, they have some easy games coming up. Maybe they continue to roll. Do you think maybe this team goes out and spends a bit to pick up at deadline?
They don't have a ton to spend. I think we talked before the show. Maybe some Wild fans can correct us in the comments, but I believe you got about $1.5 million in there, and you can make some moves as well, moving out some contracts. Though Minnesota doesn't have a ton of movable contracts, they do have some for sure, and there can be some stuff that Bill Guerin's going to do to try and make this team better. But I think the big thing is looking towards the next couple of years, because like we've said before, this is the final big year of the Parise and Suter buyouts before they go down to a combined under $2 million, and right now they're at like a number I don't even want to talk about. But I think it's possible. I think the Wild are going to do everything they can to bolster their lineup, especially that decor. I mean, now that Spurgeon's back, it's not as bad. But at the same time, you might want to get another physical body, just a guy that can fill in those bottom pairing kind of roles. I mean, they do have some guys like that, to be fair. They got like John Merrill, whatever, even like Bogosian. You got some veterans there. I think there's going to be something, whether it's a forward, whether it's a defenseman. You never know what's going to happen with injuries. You never know who might get sent out, who might get brought in. I think they'll try and do something, but honestly, for me, I'm not even worried about making that push this year. They're going to do what they can. The fact that they've done what they've already done with the cap restrictions that they've had is incredible, but I think looking over to the next 2-3 seasons, they are going to be one of the bigger buyers in the NHL if they can be, and I think for very good reason.
And I mean, I think the number is around 14 million. So having that freed up, like you said, with this team
Why'd you
dominating
have to say it?
to the way, I know, I'm so
I
sorry
didn't
about
want to
it.
say it for a reason.
But remember this, next season, that is completely gone. You guys get about 12 million to work with. This team is going to continue to get better and better as the seasons go on. And I think it's not out of the realm to say Minnesota is going to be in the Stanley Cup Finals within the next 3 years. I'm sure this is going to be clipped if it doesn't happen. And if it does happen, I'm sure no one's going to care to clip it. But the Wild are going to continue to dominate. But Josh, there is one more person that we haven't really talked about, and that is Marc-Andre Fleury. He deserves his flowers because he is the flower. The funniest thing is, when I was taking the screenshot, you actually couldn't fit the entire hockey DB in there. But going into last game against the Pittsburgh Penguins, do you have any words to really say on how it was a sentimental moment for him?
I mean, like, there's really no words to describe it. I mean, he is one of the legends of the sport. I mean, we saw Brock Faber, what he had to say about Marc-Andre Fleury, how I think Faber said there literally is no possible way to have a better mentor with his work ethic, with how nice he is to people, with just how much of a leader he has been. So, I mean, the Penguins, you saw the fans appreciate him so much, the players appreciate him, everyone in the Wild organization appreciates him. It's fantastic to see that sentimental moment, to have all the fans rallying behind him, and you're going to see a few more this season. But yeah, just shout out to him. It's been a fun ride. I know he's getting older, but he's still spry in the net. Still loves to make those dive-in saves and stuff. That shoulder save, very reminiscent of that '09 Stanley Cup final that he made near the end of the game last night. So very, very fun.
And having a guy like this is probably a huge impact on why Gus has got to the level we've seen him at. I mean, he's been a major piece
Minus
of
the
play.
Philly game.
Yes, minus that Philly game, which we won't talk about. You brought that up. I brought up the 14 million. We're
Sure,
completely
fair.
even
That's
now.
fine.
But if you guys enjoy this, and if you're a Wild fan and you just caught our videos, make sure to go down and hit that subscribe button. We'll be covering the Wild a lot more if you guys are enjoying the content. Leave a comment on anything we talked about. Maybe if you want to see someone picked up at deadline, maybe it's someone we haven't talked about that you've noticed been an impact. Leave a comment down below while you're down there, like I said, subscribe, leave a like. We'll be back with another video, so keep your eyes out. But I've been your host, Mark Pye, co-host Josh Gosse. Take care.